Right. Good afternoon, good evening, everyone. Welcome to Next Gen Professional Associates, as well as welcome to another edition of Performance Management. In today's class, we shall look at another topic entirely, which is limiting factor. Now, you can agree with me that many of you here, there is always a limiting factor or a constraint that will make you not to join this class. We said some people, someone will be joining. We said the class is 4:30, and you will see some student will join maybe 4:40. Right? It could be what could affect the student not to join on time. It could be as a result of a certain constraint. Right? Now, that is limiting factor. Limiting factor refers to any resources, constraint, or factor that is capable of hindering an organization from achieving their objective. Now, I will use a practical illustration here. You want to write 5 courses, right? And because of the financial constraint is the limiting factor that makes you not to actually want to write that 5 courses, right? So you could say that there is a limiting factor, there is a constraint for you not. So in an organization now, we could go back to organization that say, oh, that limits an organization for them not to achieve their what objective. It could be that an organization could be that, oh, we want to achieve, we want to produce 50,000 units class. We want to do what? We want to produce 50,000 units. Unfortunately, because of some constraint, it could be like they may have a labor constraint, they may have a sales constraint, they may have a material constraint, they may have these constraints. At the end of the day, they will not be able to produce more than that 20% capacity, right? And that is what we call what? Limiting factor. Now, it could be a single limiting factor or a multiple limiting factor. When it is a multiple limiting factor class, that is a linear programming. We will get there. So a single limiting factor, right? It could be a single limiting factor or a multiple limiting factor, which may be like 3 or 4 limiting factor. That will take us to linear programming. We will get there. Now, what are the steps in solving limiting factor questions? So when you see a question, that is why I told you, at Nigerian Professional Associates, we will teach you, you will pass. You will not only pass, you will as well use it in your various what offices as well. Right? Now, what are the steps in solving limiting factor questions? One, calculate the amount of scarce resources that is determine the limiting factor by comparing the required quantity and the available quantity. Class, you want to produce you want to produce 50,000 units, right? And these 50,000 units that you want to produce, you only have you want to produce 50,000 units, and you will use 50,000 material kg, 50,000 kg to produce 50,000 units, right? But the available resources for the kg, which is material, is 40,000 kg. There is a constraint there. Is that also? There is a what? There is a constraint. So this means that you cannot produce because of that scarce resources. You can't produce more than the 50 kg, right? Now, this is it. You have a 50, you need 50,000 kg to produce 50,000 units. But what the organization have is just 40,000 kg. There is a limiting factor, which means that you will end up not producing that 50,000 units because there is a constraint there, right? That is why they say, oh, you need to compare what is the available. Available means that what you will use class, what you will use to produce that 50,000 kg. Now, what is the required class? So you will not say, oh, let me say, you will say, okay, I've missed it up. Let's say available, this is what we have that is available for you. We don't want to know what you want to do about it. We have 49,000 kg for you to produce 50,000 units. But you need required, you need 50,000 kg. But available is 49. You should know that there is a constraint. That is why you have to compare them. Is there a limiting factor or not? Right? That is why limiting factor we come in. Right? Now, the next step is to determine the contribution per unit of each of the products. Of course, you need to determine the contribution of each of the products, right? When you determine the contribution, we already know how to determine the contribution. Do we have anyone who does not know how to calculate contribution? Someone should tell, okay, Raimot, right? Sorry. Please, what is the formula for calculating contribution? Adebimpe,
The formula for calculating contribution is sales minus variable
Leslie Bonds,
costs.
are you
Sir,
being paid?
eh?
Are you being paid? You are not being paid now. Your name is Leslie Bonds.
Okay, sorry, sir. Sorry, sir. Sorry, sir.
Calm down. Yeah, thank you, thank you. Adebimpe, okay, that's fine, that's fine. That's fine. Fumi, okay.
Hello,
Uh,
sir.
yeah, I'm with you.
Every contribution is sales minus variable cost.
Thank you. Now, to determine contribution, it is sales minus what? Sales minus what? Minus variable cost. Now, calculate the contribution per limiting factor of the scarce resources. We will get there. Calculate the what? The contribution per what? Per limiting factor. Then you now rank the product in order of the contribution n per unit. Now, when you determine the contribution per limiting factor of each of the products, you do what? You rank. That is the next step. Now, when you rank it, you now allocate the available resources. You allocate the raw materials to the based on what? The ranking. You will now allocate the resources, the scarce resources, based on the what? The ranking, right? The last step is to determine the profit maximizing budget. What will be our profit maximization, right? After you have allocated the scarce resources. Distinguished professional colleagues, once you know these steps, you are good to go in limiting factor. Once you see a limiting factor question, the next thing, the first thing that should come to your mind, how do I identify my required quantity? Class, required quantity means that you want to produce 50,000 units. Please, let's pay attention to this explanation, please. You want to produce 50,000 units and you need, for you to produce that 15,000 units, required kg is 50,000 kg. That is the required. What it will take you to produce that 50,000 units, it is 50,000 kg. But sometimes the 50,000 kg will not be given to you like that. Right? Now, for you to determine, you already know that they will give you that 1 kg per unit. You will use 1 kg to produce 1 unit. Then, if I want to produce 50,000 units, definitely I will need 50,000 kg to produce 50,000 units. And that is required. You will not be given that, oh, it is 50,000 kg. No, this is how it will come. 1 kg per unit. 1 kg. You will use 1 kg to produce what? 1 unit. And you want to do what? You want to produce 50,000 units. How many kg will you use? 1 kg per unit. Per unit, 1 kg per, I say it is per unit. It will goes with unit class. 1 kg per unit times the unit. We give you the what? The kg. Then the available quantity will now be given to you. Then you now compare. That is, the available means what they have. that you can use, whether we don't want to know how many kg you will use to produce the 50. This is what we have, right? At the end, you will not compare, right? Is that a limiting factor or not? Now, if this is well established, we'll move to another part, right? Now, limiting factor analysis provide us with a profit maximization product mix. Now, the question may say, oh, determine the product mix or product maximization product mix, anyone. So it's from your limiting factor. That is when you will now determine your what? Your profit. After you've allocate, you need to determine the profit what? Maximization. Or the profit maximization is different from product mix, right? Profit maximization is different from product mix. Product mix is your allocation of resources, what you will have, the quantity you will later have at the end of the period when you allocate. That is product mix. Then profit is that, oh, you've already allocated this particular unit to this particular product. What will be the profit as a result of this allocation? Product mix is the allocation, resources, the unit you allocate to class, right? The profit maximization is you already have the product mix, right? The resource, the unit that you will produce, right? Then what will be now the profit as a result of that product what mix? Within the assumption made, when a decision is made, quantitative factor should be borne in what? In mind, such as what? Because when you are making a profit maximization or a product mix, of course, you have to consider some quantitative factors, right? Because sometimes the question may say, oh, what are the quantitative factors of this so company if at all they want to go by this, right? You need to look at the sales demand. You need to look at the customer loyalty, quantity, and order. We will get to where all these things will comes to play, right? Now, what are the assumptions in limiting factor? You see a lot of assumptions. Fixed cost will be the same regardless. The estimated sales demand for each product and the resources and all that, right? Now, you can also see the limitations of what? Limiting factor. In practice, it may be difficult to produce and sell fraction of product. Now, class, in in um, in limiting factor, right? In limiting factor, you can produce a fraction. In limiting factor, you can produce a fraction. For instance, when I say a fraction, when you divide, you have 246.1 units. You can produce a fraction, right? Now, that is why they say one of the limitations is that in practice, it might be difficult to produce what? And sales fraction of these products. Class, you want to produce, let's say you want to, I know Fumi made, let's say, let me don't use Fumi, let's say Leslie Bombs, for instance, right, want to produce more, right? And Leslie Bombs now say, oh, let me let me do 1.5. 1.5. I will ask you question. Are you normal? So instead of you doing 1.5, why can't you do 2? So we know that so in practice, right, you may not be able to produce a fraction. While under the limit or under the linear programming, you cannot produce a fraction. We will get there where we use graph to illustrate all these things, right? Now, if this is established, another thing we need to know is shadow price. Class. Class, I need to establish this. Please, are you still with me or against me? I know Fumi, she's against me today. Or is Leslie Bombs. Ozoma, are you still with me?
Yes, we are.
Yeah, with you, sir.
Okay. Okay, that's fine. That's fine. All right. Another thing, Clementina, your hand is up. What happened? Do you have questions for me?
No, sir.
Okay, please put down your hands, please. Okay. Now, if this is established, we need to talk about shadow price. See, that is what we are doing at Next Gen Professional Associate. We will teach you what you need to know for you to pass that exam. Pay attention to it. See, there are some questions under the limiting factor will test your ability of shadow price. Or the question will say, calculate the dual price. You know, which one is dual price again? That is shadow price. Even under the linear programming, we still have what? Dual price. We'll get there. Now, whenever there are limiting factors, there will be opportunity cost. Now, the question is, what is shadow price? Class, shadow price is like an external unit you produce that will increase your contribution. Class, a practical illustration. You produce 20,000 units, right? And you now say, oh, for you to break even, you need to add 20,000 units first. And that 20,000 units gives you contribution of, let's say, contribution of 20,000 naira, right? And you now say, oh, for you to break even, you need to add to this production. Then you need to add to this production. Then you now add one additional unit. You add one to it, to that production unit. So as you add one to that production unit, definitely your contribution will not remain 20,000 naira. It will increase as a result of that increase in one unit. And that is what shadow price. Shadow price occur, class, when there is an additional increase. An additional increase in the costs, right, or in the units will lead to an increase in the contribution. And that is what we call what? A shadow price. Now, let's go by this. Opportunity cost. These are benefits forgone by using a limiting factor in one way instead of the next profitable way. Now, the shadow price of resources is its internal opportunity cost. This is the marginal contribution. If they see something is marginal, right? Marginal is an additional. Marginal. It varies. Additional something that you add to something, right? Now, this is the marginal, the extra contribution towards fixed cost and profit that can be earned for each unit of the limiting factor that is available. Class, we will get to that side where I will explain more better with figures, right? With what? With figures. The shadow price only applies when the extra units of resources can be obtained its normal variable cost. Class, for you to produce that extra unit, your labor or your variable cost need to increase. So once you just increase that your labor or your material by 1, definitely your contribution will also what? Increases. With that, you know, when you increase that your labor by 1, definitely that your labor that you increase by 1, you need to produce additional 1 unit as a result of that. So once you just produce additional 1 unit of that, definitely your contribution will also increase as a result of that. Class, for me, I have a factory, for instance, and this factory, the labor, normal labor, you come, you produce 20,000 units, I give you 20,000 naira, you go. So for me now say, oh, IB, we need to produce more than 20,000 units. Definitely, my cost as a labor, my cost will increase. So automatically, if my cost increase, the units will increase, right? If the unit increases, the contribution we as well increase it. That is what we call shadow price or dual price. Class, am I making sense? I'm in your mind.
Yes, you are.
Yes, sir.
Let me drink water first. Minute, please. By which contribution could fall if an organization deprived one unit of the resources. Now, on the other way around as well, if Wumi did not pay me extra money, extra overtime for me to work so that their production will increases, their contribution will also increases by that amount, right? Right? So what will happen? Their contribution will still remain the same, or it may likely reduce as well, right? Shadow price is the additional contribution. Don't forget, I've been talking about shadow price for the past 5 minutes, right? You should understand that by now, right? Now, shadow price is the additional contribution that will be made if 1 kg of scarce resources is made available. I've explained this. 1 kg. For instance, you want to produce 50,000 kg. You need, what we have is 50,000, right? 50,000 kg. Now, you decide to add 1 to the 50,000 kg, right? So, an extra, the additional that you add to that resources, to that scarce resources, to that limiting factor, will make the contribution to increase by that amount. And that is what we call shadow price or dual price. Knowledge of the shadow price of resources will be help managers to decide how much it's worth paying to acquire another unit of resources. Of course, it will help the manager to know that, right? Now, notes. Final. Okay, illustration here. Note, where the question states that the company is committed to produce a guaranteed minimum. This must be considered before allocation is made. Now, in some question, we'll look at, I think I have that question here as well. Sometimes, the question will tell you that there is a guarantee that you must allocate these 50,000 units first to product A, irrespective of your ranking, right? Irrespective of your what? Irrespective of your ranking, you must allocate it. That is guaranteed minimum. It is a policy, right? It is a what? It is a policy. And take note of that. We will get there. Where there is a single limiting factor, we use contribution per limiting factor. And that is just the logic, right? When there is a single limiting factor, don't forget, under the limiting factor is single. So when you have more than one limiting factor, that is a linear programming. We will get there. Now, single limiting factor, you use what? Contribution per limiting factor for decision making. But when the factors are more than one, what will you use? Linear programming. When the limiting factor is more than one, is what? You use linear programming. Dear professional colleagues, I hope I have been able to explain what you need to know under limiting factor. Yes, it's not short-term decision though. It's a long-term decision. Others are short-term. Or the make or buy decision is a short-term. Make or buy decision, discontinued operation, right? Discontinued make or buy, shut down, right? And the relevant costing. You will love all these things, right? You will love it because they are very, very simple. I have the steps, right? And most questions that we will solve are adopted from HCC and I, as well as study test. I can as well, right? So please. So On this note, so let's quickly go to question. So before we solve question, you can ask your question. Unmute your mic. Probably you tell us your experience. Unmute your mic, or you want to say something, anything. Just unmute your mic. Feel free. Very good. Question. Okay. There is no question. So don't worry. This time around, my system, I have more than 120%. Like Fumi said the other time, right? I have more than that. Yeah, I have more than that. So everything is well installed. So please, we can use, although I have class by 6:30, and we need to round up this class maybe by 6 so that I can prepare for the next class as well. Case study. Okay. If this is established, let's quickly look at this question. Please pay attention. It's very simple, right? Like I usually said, stay away from people that have negative energy, even at your place of work, right? So you can just, I'm not trying to promote someone's post here, but I just have to say it, right? It's for free. For me, you will not pay for adverts. You can check our post, right? So associate yourself from those who actually what is it called, have negative energy, even in your place of work or anywhere, right? So they will tell you that, oh, this is difficult, and you see them progressing in their professional career, right? But at the end of the day, they just want to they don't want you to do that particular stuff. That is why they keep saying that, oh, this thing is difficult, or is very difficult to actually pass, right? So please pay attention to this question. It's very important. PM is very simple and straightforward, right? Just understand the principle, and please before our next class, which is Tuesday, please buy an exercise book, right? Call it, let me show you. I'm coming. Let me show you I'm coming. Okay. So
So
can you
this
see?
is your real face.
So thank you. So you see, can you see? So please get a book like this, right? Call it a principle book, right? So principle book, right? So you start maybe cost estimation. You write, oh, cost estimation. What are the principles that guides cost estimation? Right? You write it. You move to the next page. Maybe limiting factor or ABC, right? Write out the, what is it called? The steps, right? So even when you're in traffic, for those of you for those of you who are in Lagos, even if when you're in traffic, you can just open it. Oh, this is principle. Now, the point is to know that from 8 years, this is my principal book, right? From 8 years, this is my principal book, right? So if I want to take any course, any topic today, I can just check it. So what are the steps? I don't need to solve any question. I will just look at the steps. Oh, these are the steps. Okay, that's fine. Then we'll move on from there. So with anything that I want to solve, I just have to use that steps, right? So that is how it works. So now let's quickly look at this question. Illustration 1 is under limiting factor, right? Is under what? Is under limiting factor, right? So Okocha Limited manufacture 3 products, right? SYZ that have the following costs. SYZ, right? Material, direct labor, grade 1, grade 2, right? This unit here, this is 230 naira per unit. When you look at it, this is 230 naira per unit. This is your labor, direct labor for grade 1. This is for grade 2. You can see it for grade 2, Then you have what? The fixed production overhead, right? Then what else? You have selling price to be this. Then the budgeted sales in units to be this, class. Grade 1 labor is paid 15 naira per hour, class. Grade 1. When you work for 1 hour, class. When you work for 1 hour, we will pay you. Please confirm if you can see my screen. If you can't see it, please let me know, please, so I can bold this part. I think some of
Yes,
you
sir.
actually
I can see
complained.
it.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. So, grade 1 labor is paid, right? Grade 1 labor is paid 15 naira per what? 15 naira per hour, which means that when you work for 1 hour, when you work for, see, have an understanding of this hourly something, blah, blah, blah. See, I just understand it this way. You work, I will pay you 15 naira per hour. How many hours did you work? I will pay you based on that numbers of hours. Can you see it? Now, grade 2 is what? 30 naira per hour. I will pay you based on the numbers of hours you have worked. I will pay you based on that. Is that not so? Now, the next one is, on being informed of the draft sales budget, the production manager pointed out that, right, that there would only be 50,000 hours for grade 1. Now, the manager now points out that what will we have? See, we don't want to know the numbers of units you want to produce, right? That is available. What will we have, right? We don't want to know the numbers of hours you will use to produce any units you want to produce. But what will we have at the end of the period is just 50,000 hours. That is available hours, right? Grade 1 labor available in the next year. That is the available hours, class. Now, if this is the available hours, and overtime working was impracticable, right? There is no overtime. Now, the next one is the grade 2. What is this grade 2? Grade 1 and grade 2 is labor, right? Grade 1 and grade 2 is what? Is labor. Is labor hours. Then I give us available hours for that labor. Is that not so? Just labor. In some question, they will give you available hours for material, available hours for labor, then you can now compare. We'll get there. But in this case, we're given that what is available for labor for grade 1 is this. Then for grade 2, what is available is this, right? So we need to check which one of these is a limiting factor. Is it grade 1 or grade 2? Because that is the labor you will use in producing all those what? Units. In some question, you'll be given the labor, material, then before you now check, is it material or labor that is the limiting factor? But in this case, you're already given that, oh, what is available, which means that under the direct labor, there are 2 labor there, the grade 1 and grade 2. Now, out of this grade 1 and grade 2, which one is the limiting factor? Right? Limiting factor means constraint. Right? Now, required. What product mix would maximize the company profits? Show resulting profit per product and in what? In total. So class, suggested solution. Suggested solution. Right? Suggested solution. What is the first step? Identify the available. So you can screenshot the steps. Let me go back. You can see in this question there is no shadow price. So we don't need to do that. But we can test it. We can test shadow price. Okay. You can see you can screenshot these steps so that we can use it as we move on, right? Right? Please screenshot. Are we good? I need to confirm that. Are we good?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Okay. Okay. So now the first thing is grade 1. It is based on direct labor. Let me say direct labor. Step 1. we need to identify the required, right? As well as what? Available. We already know the available, right? But let's bring them out one after the other. So, step one. Step one. Step one. Okay, is under labor, right? Labor, right? Grade one. Grade one. We want to determine the limiting factor, right? Grade two. The scarce resources. The one that has the scarce resources, right? Now, we already have what is, okay, let's look for the required first. Required hours. Required hours. Because available, this is available. Available is in hours. So you need to determine the required hours. Now, class, what is required hours? Required hours means that this is budgeted sales, right? Budgeted sales. If you want to sell, definitely what you budgeted for, what you sell, what you produce, it is what you produce is what you sold, right? Now, in some question, they're supposed to separate it and say, oh, production and sales unit is this. So, but you should use it this way that, oh, since we just have budgeted sales, in some question, they will separate budgeted sales and production. But in this question, you can assume that your production, your budgeted sales is your production. Your production, budgeted sales is your, why, which means that you produce 16,000 units, then you sell 16,000 units. You sold 16,000 what? Units. Is that not so? So now, for you to produce 16,000 units, class, for you to produce 16,000 units, how many hours will it take you to produce 16,000 units? How many hours will it take you to produce what? To produce 16,000 units. That is required. Now, how do we do that? Now, class, this is labor. 15 naira. We need to get the numbers of hours. We need to get the numbers of what? The numbers of hours, class. Now, this one here, this one here is this is 75 naira. This is 75 naira per unit. Class, this is 75 naira per unit. It was not even stated. This is 230 naira per unit. This is it. Do you know why? Do you know how I was able to identify that, oh, this is 75 naira per unit? It is because when you look at the figures, it is not in total. So you don't expect it to be total direct labor hours. No, it is 75 naira per unit. Now, do you know that you can get the numbers of hours? So how do we do that? First, the first thing you need to do is that how many hours will it take you to produce 1 unit of X? How many hours will it take you to produce 1 unit of X? How many hours will it take you to produce one unit? All right. Now, for you to establish that, get hours per unit. Now, for you to get hours per unit, since this is 75 naira per unit, what you need to do is that divide 75 naira per unit divided by 50 naira per hour. Now, let me show you something. Now, I'm coming. Before that, let's get hours per unit. Grade, okay, hours per unit. Grade one. Grade one of XYZ, right? XYZ. Okay. Grade one. The product is XYZ, right? Let's forget about this one. Okay. Sorry. Okay. Coming. XYZ, right? Don't worry, it's simple, right? It's very simple. Just pay attention. XYZ. YZ. right? This is XYZ. SYZ. Okay, good. Good one. So we want to determine the hours per unit, right? Now, you bring it. Okay. I think this is okay. Let me do this part. Okay, now, class, direct labor hours per unit is this. Now, for X, it is 75 naira per unit divided by what? Divided by 50 naira per hour. Now, let's look at it, how it works, right? Now, if you want to get that, let me do this one here. Okay. Let's say 75, coming, 75 naira per unit, right? 75 naira per unit divided by 50 naira per hour. Let me use this so that you understand something. I want you to understand something here, right? I want to get hours per unit. Class, I want to get what? Hours per unit. So 50 naira per hour. Class. Now, I want to get hours per unit. Hours. How many hours will I use to produce 1 unit? 1 unit, class. 1 what? 1 unit. Now, naira can cancel naira. Class, naira can cancel naira, right? What do we have? If naira cancels naira, you want to get hours per what? Hours per unit. Sorry, this is supposed to come first. Let's this should be like this. Yes, this should be like this. 75 naira per unit. Okay, now what do we have? When you divide this, you can see that hours can cancel hours, right? Hours can cancel these hours, right? Now, what do you have?
9
What do you have?
0.67 hours per unit.
0.67 0.67 hours per what? Per unit. Because this hours it is not opposite, it is hours per unit. So when you want to determine hours per unit, is the hours that will come first before the unit, right? So now you can see that naira can cancel this naira, right? When naira cancel naira, you are left with what? 50 per hour. So when you divide this divided by this, what you have is 0.67 hours per unit, which means that you will use X will use 0.6 hours, right, to produce per unit, to produce 1 unit. Now, if I want to produce, how many units did they want to produce? If I want to produce 16,000 units, how many hours will I use? It will be 16,000 times what? Times 0.67. First, you need to determine the hours per unit. In this question, did not give us hours per unit, right? Hours per unit means what you will use 1 unit to produce how many 1 unit. How many hours will you use to produce 1 unit? Now, this is 0.67 hours. You will use 0.67 hours to produce 1 unit. That is what it means. Class, next, what do you have? Divide it. What do you have? Let's move on. Y. Please, you can screenshot. Y is what? 50 divided by what? 55. 50 divided by what? This is how to determine our hours per unit. 50, right? 50.
0.991.
Okay.
91.
Okay, thank you. 50 naira per hour. Please, always write it in full, right? These are workings, right? 50 naira per what? Per hour. Divided by what is the unit? What is the amount for labor? 55, right?
55.
Exact,
55.
yes.
So what do we have? What do we have? Let me use this.
0.91.
0.1.
I'm coming. I'm coming. Sorry. 0. To move this one is another problem. What is this now? Control Z. Okay, let me just use this, I beg. So, divided by 55, please, 55 naira per what? Per unit. 0. What? Sorry, give me the figure.
0.91.
0.91.
Okay, equals to, don't call figure like this, so I beg now. Which one is 0 points? Have we forgotten?
Okay, 0.91 per unit.
Thank you.
Hour.
Thank you. 0. What?
91.
91.
Hour per
0.91.
hour per unit.
Hours per unit.
0.91 per unit. Hours per unit. Okay.
Is hours per unit. We want to determine hours per unit. It means that they will use 0.9 hours, 0.991 hours per unit. Right?
All right.
Thank you. Hours per unit. Well, we have enough time. So next. So the next one is 50 naira, right? 50 naira. We do the same thing with this. 50 naira per hour divided by, what is the unit cost? What is the unit cost? Unit cost. What is the unit cost? 25 naira, right? 25 naira per what? Per unit. Divided by 25 naira. Divided by 25 naira per unit. 25 naira.
That's 2 hours per unit.
Okay, 2 hours per unit. God bless you with that statement, right? 2 hours. 2 hours per unit. Right? So if this is established, class, so we need to get class. If this is this, you will use 0.6 hours to produce 1 unit. Right? To produce what? To produce 1 unit. Taufik, I'm coming. You just joined. I saw you when you joined. Just hold on. I'm coming. If you will use 0.6 hours to produce 1 unit. Now, how many to produce 1 unit? Class, the question now is, how many units did they produce so that you will get the total numbers of hours, required hours, class. So now, we start it here. The required hours, if this is 0.67 hours to produce 1 unit, right? Times, oh, you need to do the grade, sorry. This is for grade 1, right? Coming. So we need to do for grade 2 as well. Sorry. Grade 2. Okay. Now, before we move to the grade 2, Taufik, do you have question for me? Yeah, this question
Yes,
is...
sir. Yes, sir.
Okay. Okay, let me finish.
This,
I'm with you. Go ahead.
okay, sir. I'm looking at the price. The unit price is higher than the hours. So I'm confused that it should be maybe 75 divided by 50. I don't know. Because the one that has 25 naira per unit is now 2 hours, while the ones that have 75 naira is not even up to an hour.
Okay. Okay. That's good. Okay. Now, which one do we have? This, right? The one that have 25. Okay, Sunday. Interesting.
Yes, sir. I think the grade 1 labor hour, which of S, which is having 75 naira, and the cost per labor is 50 naira. Me, I'm of the opinion that okay, if cost for labor is 50 naira, then 75 can give us 1 unit and 1 unit and half. Then 25 naira
I
per
don't
unit
understand
can
that.
actually give us.
I don't understand that analogy.
I guess what he's trying to say that the 75 naira will give us 1 hour, 30 minutes.
Yes, that's what I mean.
Okay, that we should not have used, okay, since we are paying 50
We should
naira
have
per
divided
hour.
75 by 50. Yes.
Okay, that's fine.
That we should have divided 75